Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the second half of this meeting of Winchester City Council's Planning Committee, taking place in the Walton Suite of Winchester Guildhall. It is Wednesday, the 16th of April, 2025, and the time is 2 p.m. My name is Councillor Jane Rutter, and I'm Chair of the Planning Committee. Around the table, we have the other elected members of the committee, and we are supported today by a number of officers. Lorna Hutchings, the service lead for the built environment, Daniel Lucas, our legal advisor, the case officers, which will change with each item, and for this afternoon's session, Matthew Watson from Democratic Services, who supports the committee and operates the recording equipment. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded to the Council's YouTube channel. Subtitles are available, and advice on how to turn these on is set out on our website. Please ensure your mobile phones and any other electronic devices are on silent or preferably turned off entirely. In the unlikely event that it is necessary to evacuate the building, the fire alarm will sound. Please follow all the instructions given to you by our team. Please look at the handout provided on your chairs or on the information slides for further guidance about this meeting. Finally, can I welcome the members of the public to the meeting? Those of you who registered to speak, I will call you forward when it is your turn to make your contribution. Members of the committee may ask you questions of clarification, so please remain at the microphone until after members' questions. The microphone is turned on by pressing the button on the base of the unit, and a timer will appear on the screen to remind you of your remaining time. And before we start, just a reminder that Councillor Williams has recused himself from this item for reasons that he has some connection with the applicant, business connection. Right, moving on to our agenda, and we are now at item number 11 on your agendas, which is at the Sanctuary Manor Farm Green, Twyford. And our presenting officer is Lisa Booth. Over to you, Lisa.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to draw your attention to the update sheet. There are slight amendments to conditions 4 and 5, and just to note that the Twyford neighbourhood, Twyford Parish Council, comments Appendix A was put in twice. Appendix 1, sorry.
Twice the impact.
Thank you. So we're dealing today with the Sanctuary, which is an existing lawful tourism site on the southwestern edge of Twyford, just outside the settlement boundary. The land slopes down from the main road, the B3335, to the east, and footpath Twyford 8 runs along the rear of the southwestern boundary, which is all hedged along there, and there's open countryside and water meadows beyond. The northeastern edge of the site is defined by the gardens of Manor Farm Green. This is the site you can see on the plan, which is in the blue line, which most of this largely falls within the Twyford Conservation Area. The northern boundary of the site is formed by a farm track leading to Manor Farm, which is to the west, and also provides vehicular access to the site. As I said before, the boundaries are largely formed of hedgerow. If we can first turn to the lawful use of the site, there have been a few reports of breach of planning over the last 10 or so years. These suspected breaches have been fully investigated by Winchester City Council enforcement team, and each case has been closed, as the evidence gathered indicates that there is no breach of planning occurring on the land. The site has previously been operated with 2 of the 5 yurts that were allowed on appeal in 2011, which can accommodate up to 16 people. The proposal before us reduces the overnight occupancy, which is still on a seasonal basis, as was permitted on the appeal. So that what is proposed for us can only sleep 12 people collectively within the buildings, and 2 yurts that will remain, will be used for ancillary purposes. The business faced significant challenges during COVID, which impacted bookings, and further bookings have been halted whilst awaiting the outcome of this application in order to prevent any disruption should construction commence. So as I said, well, the proposal is for, if I go to the plot plan, the conversion is for the conversion of the existing facilities building, which is here, which and a dormer is proposed in this quite small roof space, which is just for storage at the moment, and that will be a 1-bedroom unit, and then 3 of the permitted yurts will be taken out, and so it's hard to explain, and the replacement, and then there'll be 1 3-bedroom lodge, which is here, which is an L shaped, and then 1 2-bedroom lodge, which is here. And then there will be the 2 yurts, which are there and there, which are for ancillary purposes, and they will be for seasonal use, 1st of April to the 31st of October. The lodges are a natural continuation of what is already on site and will allow further appreciation of the ecosystems that are on the site, access from a sustainable location to nearby facilities and services in Twyford, public rights of way and the surrounding South Downs National Park. And that is an opportunity to contribute sustainably to economic growth and contribute to purpose 2 of the National Park, which is to promote opportunities for the understanding and enjoyment of the special qualities of the National Park by the public. The site has an existing tourism use, which is policy SD23, which seeks to retain existing visitor accommodation, and any loss would need evidence to demonstrate it is unviable. Therefore, it is a material consideration to retain the visitor accommodation. Policy SD23 of the South Downs Local Plan allows for sustainable tourism where it is in accordance with the relevant criteria. In this case, it's criteria G, as referred to in policy ST13 of the Twyford Neighbourhood Plan, which sets out criteria which proposals outside the settlement policy boundary should be in accordance with. The stance is supported by paragraph 88 of the NPPF, which states in regard to supporting a prosperous rural economy, planning policies and decisions should enable sustainable rural tourism and leisure developments which respect the character of the countryside. Therefore, it's considered that the principle of the proposal is acceptable. So the site sits on a lower ground level than the main road, and is densely vegetated with high tree line along the front road frontage. It's well screened from public vantage points with established hedgerow along boundaries and tree and wildflower planting within the site itself. When the yurts were permitted at appeal, the planning inspector did not consider that they would harm the special qualities of the national park. Since that time, the landscaping within the site has developed and been maintained with wildflower meadows and other planting. This is to be further enhanced through this application. The proposal is for a 3-bed lodge to the northeast boundary which is an L shape. This is it here. Design built of wood cladding and slate roof. A 2-bed lodge close to the southwestern boundary, a gently curved green roof design, which follows the contours of the land. And then the existing facilities building, sorry if I can go down, will have a dormer window added and will be used as a 1-bed lodge. And as I said before, the 2 yurts will remain for ancillary uses. The landscape officer's initial observations of the scheme were cautious in regard to Lodge 1. Let's go back. But further to a site visit and a walk around the adjacent footpaths, an amended plan was put in. A landscape added to this side boundary here, and the lodge moved slightly further into the site. The proposed buildings are screened in views from the road and will only be seen in limited glimpses from the public right of the way to the north and south from the access to the site along Manor Farm Green. The buildings are not considered to be overbearing or visually impactful to users of the public right of way. Materials are considered to be in keeping with the character of the area. There is an abundance of public rights of way close to the site, linking to the wider national park, including Pilgrims Trail and pumping station and Twyford pumping station to the southeast, reducing reliance on a private car and sustainable onward travel. The site is close to the centre of Twyford, walking distance, and has a number of good facilities and services. Good public transport links are also available into Winchester and further afield from Shawford train station. Due to the positioning of the buildings within the site, Lodge 1 will be over 15 metres from the very corner boundary of, from there to there, of number 6 Manor Farm Green, and 55 metres from the side of the dwelling, so from there to there. Lodge 2 will be somewhat obscured by the existing facilities building, which is the closest building to the neighbour, but is sited some 65 metres away from the boundary of 6 Manor Farm Green. In regard to additional traffic, the buildings are a replacement for the authorised yurts, which would generate a similar amount of traffic, people and general noise if at full capacity. Having regard to the full assessment as set out in the report, the proposal is compliant with the NPPF and the relevant policies of the South Downs National Park Local Plan and Twyford Neighbourhood Plan. It's not considered that the degree of harm will unduly result in any adverse impact on residential amenity to dwellings within the Manor Farm Green or users of the public right of way, either by traffic noise and disturbance overlooking Lost Blight or through the creation of overbearing structures. It's not considered to unduly impact on the landscape character of the national park, and therefore your officers recommend approval of the scheme in accordance with the conditions as set out in the report.
Right, thank you. We now turn to public speaking, and first we have our objector, Dan Kwiatkowski. Dan, you have up to 3 minutes, and the timer will start when you start speaking. So over to you.
Thank you very much. My name is Dan Kwiatkowski. I live in 6 Manor Farm Green, and I'm also representing the majority of the residents of Manor Farm, who are not NIMBYs, paramedics, firemen, teachers, doctors, all the people who supported us through COVID. Now we're just fed up of not being listened to and having our objections not listened to. This started in 2011, where this was supposed to be a horse shelter. Retrospective planning, a bay window is put in, and then a ornamental pond is put in. No sign of a horse. They're allowed on appeal, and the pond is allowed to remain because it's got great crested newts in it. But now, in this next development stage, it appears that the great crested newts have disappeared, which is quite convenient. Not a single horse came on site. Then in 2012, there was an application for 5 yurts, which was refused but allowed on appeal. Then 2016, retrospective permission for closure of facilities building, hardstanding, 2 Velux windows, inset barbecue. This was refused. It was refused because the case officer said that enforcement records concluded that the building offered primary living accommodation was tantamount to the creation of a new dwelling in the countryside. Now, this was appealed, and it was only allowed on non-determination because the council didn't get the documents in on time. However, your arguments still stand, and it's still contrary to LPPI policy CP19(2). What's changed? During 13 years, there haven't been a single, not one single commercial camper. It's been used for friends and family and for pretty much a semi-permanent residential use. Not one single commercial camper. 13 years. We're not just talking about COVID here. So you're not capable, you're not able to build, you're not able to reserve, you're not able to find any contact details for this site, none at all. So how are you supposed to be able to book? It's also contrary to, this would also be illegal because Natural England has got 2 objections on September 2022, November 2023. Where's the documentation, please, for the assessment? Where's the documentation for the nitrate and phosphorus neutral assessment? It's a legal obligation to provide that, and you haven't provided that, and it's not public information. And if you think that a screenshot of some strange cropped sewage assessment is a full assessment, then it certainly isn't. And I'd like to know where the council's assessment is and why that isn't public information. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dan. Thank you. And thank you for sticking within your 3 minutes. Members, have we got questions of clarification? And can I just ask, so you live
Number 6.
number 6. Can we see that on this plan?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
That one there. So you're the nearest neighbour.
I am the nearest, so I'm there on a
So
daily
as
basis.
far as you're concerned, it's not been used as a holiday,
Not under any circumstances, no.
but there has been evidence of people living there or being in
Yes.
accommodation.
Friends and family.
Okay. Right. Any more questions of clarification, members? No, thank you very much.
Thank you very
You're
much.
very clear. Thank you. So next we have the Parish Council representative, Chris Corcoran. Welcome back, Mr. Corcoran. Shall I say Councillor Corcoran? Even longer than I have, Chris. Goodness me. Right. Anyway, when you're ready, you also have 3 minutes. Thank you.
You've heard the strong words of Dan Kwiatkowski, speaking for those who live in Manor Farm. They can see what goes on, can see the difference between the planning case made on numerous occasions and what actually happens. The owners here have, I'm afraid to say, run rings around the planning authority. I'm sure the officers appreciate this. They're not naive. But what can they do about it? Here, a planning case is made, citing all the policies, ostensibly plausible, and you have to judge it on its planning merits. And the officer recommends consent on that basis. She is convinced. However, you do not have to be. You have discretion. Last month, you disagreed with her recommendation to approve stables on the other side of the road. A month or two before, the South Downs Committee disagreed with their officer on holiday units on the site next door, both adjacent to this proposed development. 4 holiday units were approved on the site immediately over the other side of the road, but by conversion of existing buildings, not new build. What you have in front of you in 3 small fields in an area of less than 10 acres is no less than 12 holiday units in 10 separate buildings, plus the palatial stables you refused last month. All of these are still in play. The site is countryside where development is only permitted in exceptional circumstances. What are the exceptional circumstances here? There's certainly not need, because you've got holiday accommodation both on site and the 4 approved immediately over the road. So what are the reasons for refusal? It is, the first is a design. And what you've got here is 4 designs of different buildings plonked in the middle of a field with no form or relation to the type of development you get in the national park, to the conservation area, or to the magnificent listed barns which are on the adjacent site. So the reason here is failure on the contrary to the form and layout appropriate to the national park. Do they enhance? And the SD 23 requires you to pass that test. I'd ask you to look at that in detail. They do not enhance. They don't enhance the conservation area. They don't enhance the countryside because they're hidden. And the third is the cumulative development one. And this is a test imposed on you by SD1, which requires you to look at cumulative development, which I spelled out.
Thank you very much, Chris. Members, do we have any questions of clarification for the parish council representative? I think you were very clear, Chris. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And finally, we have Alice Drew. Welcome, Ms. Drew. You also have up to 3 minutes and your time starts when you start speaking.
Perfect. Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, councillors. My name is Alice Drew and I'm a planning consultant at Southern Planning Practice. I'm here today on behalf of my applicant, Miss Ellie Strange, to support the officer's recommendation to approve the planning application for the conversion of the existing facilities building to a 1-bedroom holiday let and the replacement of 3 yurts with 1 3-bedroom holiday let and 1 2-bedroom holiday let. The site is currently used for tourism and has planning permission for 5 yurts, which can be used for overnight accommodation. Each yurt sleeps 8 people. The existing building on site is a facilities building. The proposals will replace 3 yurts and convert the existing facilities building to provide permanent tourist accommodation on the site. The provision of such accommodation is acceptable under both the Twyford Neighbourhood Plan and the South Downs Local Plan. The proposals have been subject to extensive engagement over a 3-year period with the case officer, the nature-based solutions manager at the National Park, and other consultees. All of the consultee responses received during the consideration of the application have been addressed and there are no outstanding objections. The existing facilities building will be modified with the dormer window being inserted to enable the creation of habitable space at the first floor. There will be no increase in the ridge height of this building. The Northern Lodge is located on the existing footprint of the yurt and an existing building. The Southern Lodge is located in between 2 of the existing yurts, which will be replaced by the proposals. The Northern Lodge has been designed to reflect and enhance the character of the existing facilities building, whilst the Southern Lodge has been designed to integrate well with the surrounding landscape, through taking the topography of the site into consideration at the request of the landscape officer. The Southern Lodge has a green roof and a new native landscape buffer zone is proposed, in addition to the existing mature hedgerow on the southern boundary of the site. This will further screen the new unit of tourist accommodation from the public footpath which runs along this boundary, enhancing privacy and blending the development seamlessly into the landscape. The level of glazing on the proposed tourist accommodation has been kept to a minimum on all elevations to ensure there is no impact on the dark night skies, whilst sufficient natural light is provided to the areas of living space. The proposals will not increase the level of use on the site, with the proposed holiday lets being used for the same amount of time as the current yurts, from April to October, which will ensure the development does not generate any additional nutrients and is therefore nutrient neutral. As confirmed in the officer's report, the principle of the conversion of the existing facilities building to a holiday let and replacement of 3 yurts with permanent tourist accommodation is acceptable under policy ST1 of the Twyford Neighbourhood Plan and policy SD23 of the South Downs Local Plan. Given the proposal's careful siting and design, it is not considered that there would be any adverse harm to surrounding landscape character or the special qualities of the South Downs National Park. We would like to highlight that there are no objections from statutory consultees and therefore we would encourage you to support your officer's recommendation and approve this application for sustainable tourism.
Thank you very much. Members, do we have questions of clarification for the applicant's representative? Councillor Laming.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a couple. The facilities building, will that still be able to be used by people renting the yurts?
So the yurts won't be rented anymore. They will be, 2 of them will be removed 3 of them will be removed, 2 of them will remain, and the 2 that will remain will be used for ancillary uses, by the people, the new users of the tourist accommodation. But the facilities building is being converted to a 1-bedroom holiday let. So as Lisa showed you in the plans, there's a new dormer window going in at first floor, and because that's just a loft space at present, that will actually increase the headroom and the height of an element section, as you can see there, and that will provide an area of habitable space. The facilities building will now be a 1-bedroom holiday let.
Is that being used as accommodation at the moment?
No.
The second thing is we're hearing from the objectors that there doesn't appear to be a business case for this. Is there a registered company for letting these out?
Yes, so one reason maybe for that is because this application has taken 3 years to go through because of the nutrient neutrality. We hit phosphates halfway through the consideration of the application. And for the last 3 summers, I believe, the yurts haven't been erected because we've always been thinking, oh, we might get planning permission on this. So they haven't been used for the last few years. but they have, prior to that, they were used and rented out by the applicant.
Can you prove that they've been used for the last 3 years?
Yeah, I'm sure there's business records that could be produced if required.
Because we hear from the parish council that there is problems in that area. And we want to make sure that these are for holiday lets.
Yeah.
Councillor Laming, I think you've had your answer as much as you're going to get. Yes, thank you. Okay, Councillor Corcoran. I'm sorry, Cunningham. Sorry, Patrick. Councillor Cunningham, thank you.
Very much. Although you have permission for 5 yurts, which you have got at the moment, can you let us know the occupancy percentage and the revenue generated since 2012 for the 2 yurts that were actually erected? I understand you're talking about the last 3 years where you didn't have them up.
Yeah.
But since 2012 you have. So for 10 years, can you tell us what the occupancy percentage was?
They were rented out between April and October. We would have to get records back to see what the occupancy percentage was, but between April and October, that's when they were rented out. But I wouldn't be able to, I don't have to hand the number of days that they were occupied for.
Surely that is something you should have submitted at the application stage.
It wasn't a requirement of the application. It's not a validation requirement, nor was it a policy requirement.
I don't think it was a previous condition, but it is one of the new conditions that we're putting on this application. Okay, keeping a register. Councillor Pett.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Laming asked if there was a company that was involved in letting these yurts out. The only company I can find registered associated with the sanctuary is Hand to Health Limited, which is a company that's part owned by the applicant. Has a share capital of £3. Are you telling us that that is the company that's been engaged in letting out these yurts for 13 years?
I would have to check with the applicant on that one, but I don't think that's a matter for consideration.
But you did say that there
planning
was a company that had been letting these yurts out for 13 years.
I know the applicant has let them out, but I don't think that's a planning consideration.
Okay, I'm just asking that for clarification, that's all.
Indeed, but it's not a planning consideration. So if we could stop asking those sorts of questions, because I'm afraid that we can't make this decision based on that information. Councillor Langford-Smith.
Thank you, Chair. You might tell me exactly the same thing, because I have a question. When an application has come forward previously for buildings in the countryside, it's been accompanied by a business case, which shows the demand, the projected income, etc., to show that it is a supportable business. I'm not seeing anything like that on this application.
I don't think that's the case for tourism, because it is so strongly recommended by both the South Downs National Parks plans, our own policies, and indeed the National Planning Policy Framework. But I will ask Lorna to confirm that.
To confirm, with tourism applications, there's no requirement for any business or viability case to be put forward. As you correctly pointed out, there's a strong presumption in favour, given the nature of the policies. In the South Downs local plan, it's one of the park's purposes to open up the countryside. The test is actually the other way around from reading it. They don't want to lose viable tourism sites, rather than testing should we allow this one. The principles have been set there before by the Inspectorate for Tourism, so that we don't look at viability. It's not for this this committee to be looking at who is the business that's going to be running this or implementing this. It's a planning permission that runs with the land, not with a business, not with a person. It can be implemented or not implemented, and that isn't particularly material, whether it has or whether it hasn't. It rests with the land for someone to pick up and use as and when they want to. Thank you.
Councillor Ashwell.
I shall ask a different question. The units that are going to be built, how many cars are you expecting there might be at any one time?
So based on the three units, so the one unit, it's a tourist accommodation, we would imagine that would only be a couple that would stay there absolute max, so you'd be looking at one car, and we'd be looking at the other two, probably a family or a couple taking both of those, so probably be looking at a maximum of 4 cars on site if the third unit, the 3-bedroom tourist accommodation, would have 2 cars, but probably around 3 cars would be maximum on site at any one time.
Yes, I was going to ask about parking. The parking is at the entrance, isn't it?
Yes.
So is the idea that people should park there and then just trundle their bags or whatever across the grass to their lodges across the other side?
Yes, absolutely. So we didn't want to put parking next to the holiday lodges because you'd be introducing more hard standing in the countryside. So it's a very natural site. I don't know if anyone's been out to the site, but it's a very natural site, and they wanted to keep it as natural as possible. So putting parking next to the holiday lets was something we considered inappropriate in this location, and that's why it will all be contained in one site, and then users will park and then walk to their holiday accommodation.
Thank you. So if there are no more questions of clarification, members, thank you very much indeed. You may return to your seat. Thank you. So, Lisa, is there anything you wanted to add before we come to members' questions? It's been covered. Okay. So we now take questions on the report to our officer, please. Could I ask the yurts which these lodges are replacing were conditioned to be taken down if ever the holiday use ended?
Yes.
Is there any possibility of adding a similar condition on the lodges? Because you know what happens otherwise. You can't do that on the lodges. If the lodges, if the holiday use becomes unviable, and
Chair, I did cover the issue of viability, and you'd have to have a really sound planning reason to grant a permanent permission to then require those buildings to be deconstructed if they weren't viable. That's not a planning reason to do so. And looking at the planning policy, as I've already established, there's a very positive sort of presumption in favour of this in the right locations. The yurts are by their very nature temporary in themselves, and because of that, sometimes the visual appearance of it can be less acceptable than a nicely constructed lodge, which is made of natural materials, sitting in the landscape, which is the type of accommodation we might approve for tourism routinely in the countryside.
right, so you're saying we can't add a condition that the lodges should be removed if the holiday let finishes, if the holiday use is non-viable?
No, because if you look at the planning policies, it's really compelling that sort of positivity towards these sites. And it's not looking at temporary permissions, it's not putting in tests of viability, it's not looking at criteria where that becomes a concern. If we're assessing the impact of it, you would need to be satisfied in their longevity in the building, in the way that the building sits itself, that it's acceptable in the countryside, rather than worrying about the viability of the business. It's not a planning consideration.
But the condition, so okay, that's
Can I
fine.
just add something?
Sorry,
So
yes, of course.
If, for example, they didn't want to use it anymore for tourism, you've got the buildings there. We have conditions on there that say
that was going to
use
be my
is for tourism only. If you want to do anything else on there, they would have to apply for planning permission, and it would have to be assessed on that particular policy on whatever they wanted to do. That helps.
Yes, so the planning condition that we've got here.
Yeah, there are a number of
Appendix
conditions.
1, those conditions under
yeah.
Condition 4 about holiday occupancy.
Yes, 3,
those
4,
go with
5,
the buildings, and they are
6.
in perpetuity. All
Yes.
those conditions go with the buildings, and
Yeah.
they're in perpetuity. Nothing to do with the current owners. They go with the buildings.
No, yeah. So if
any
you go buy it,
future
you have those
owner
conditions.
would
It goes
have
with
to-
the land. Yes.
Exactly. Go for planning permission to change those conditions.
Yes.
If they didn't want to operate them as a holiday business.
Yes.
Is that clear, everybody? Good. Councillor Laming.
Carrying that forward a little bit further, Lisa. If they don't have any bookings over a long period of time,
Yes.
what happens then?
I don't know. It would just be.
That's a matter of
force people to
yeah,
people.
that's my
It's up to
question.
them to make
Yeah.
the business work. They're obviously going to. There's a financial outlay for this, so you would assume that would be wanting people to pay their money, for the business to work.
Yeah, that's what I'm concerned with, is making sure that they are used for the purpose that we're actually.
Yeah.
That's what the
Right,
conditions are all about.
Yeah. So then you would have a log of people up to state register.
How often will we be checking that register?
Well, I should say, I shouldn't think that we normally would just go around checking people's registers, but obviously if there was like, complaint to enforcement, then we would, we can go and check that. And obviously, it gives that bit of certainty, bit more certainty, because that wasn't obviously there before.
Yeah,
So.
no, I appreciate you putting that in. It's just that listening to the objector and the parish council, I think they need some reassurance.
Yeah, I was going to say, well, we have investigated all of the breaches, but
yeah.
I think, councillor, as well, you'll see in the update sheet there's an added part to that condition about holiday occupancy. So you'll see on your update sheet, page 6, the holiday accommodation unit shall be limited to occupation of any unit for a maximum period of 4 weeks, and for no more than 3 times per year, with a break between each occupation by the same occupier by 4 weeks. These conditions are actually stronger than what the planning inspector originally put on the yurts.
No, I appreciate
so
that.
What that, if I can go on, what that does is it prevents a situation where between April and October, and a short hold tenancy could be granted, a 6-month lease. So that condition is a break clause. So now there could not be, for example, and a short hold tenancy creating a demise, the right to occupy, to live, be a domicile as such. So that break clause effectively goes further than the planning inspector. And now there can be more guarantee, I think is the best way to put it, that they are going to be used for holiday purposes. As to whether or not the business actually gets bookings is by the by. That's subject to market conditions. If they're not filled, they're not filled. It's as simple as that. The market will dictate the site might be sold, the conditions will follow across. And if the new purchaser can't run that business in that particular way, we'll see an application for a change of use.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I think the officer's done a good job putting that in, because I was going to ask for that if it hadn't.
I would also add, there is a strict marketing, because obviously the purpose too of the South Downs National Park is to promote this sort of thing. And it says development proposals on their own. No, not that one, sorry. Sorry. Oh, there we go. Development proposals that would result in the loss of visitor accommodation, visitor attractions and recreation facilities will not be permitted unless evidence is provided that the current use is financially unviable and a robust marketing campaign of at least 12 months has been carried out that clearly demonstrates there is no market demand for the existing use or an equivalent tourism use, or the current use or related development harms the special quality. So, but we will stick to that. So there is that second level there.
Can I just, Councillor Pett, you'll be next. Lisa, if I could just ask, the conditions, as far as I understand them, therefore mean that there is no question, for instance, of a site manager staying on site on a permanent basis, either permanently or during the time that the holiday accommodation is available, i.e. in the summer, is there?
No.
Councillor Pett.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, I concede that an inspector granted this tourism use some years ago. I'm looking at policy SD23 G1. Such a development will be permitted where it is demonstrated that if proposals are outside a settlement boundary, they will positively contribute to the natural beauty, wildlife and cultural heritage of the national park. I can see that the erection of 5 yurts could be acceptable in that light. I find it very hard to see that the proposed buildings in this application could positively contribute to the natural beauty, wildlife and cultural heritage of the national park. That is before I consider the comments that we heard from the objector and from the parish council that there has been no visible tourism use of this site in the past 13 years. With them, I've gone online and sought to find any reference to this site at all on the net, be it tourism use or otherwise, and the only use of the site I can find is in the context of art psychotherapy. Now that I would suggest is not a tourism use, but it's the only use I can find for the site in the public domain on the internet. I can quite understand the position of the objector and the parish council that in the 13 years that this site has been running, there appears to be little, if any, tourism use. Now I shouldn't put that to one side, but say again, if we're now looking at the erection of buildings on this site outside a settlement boundary, they must positively contribute to the natural beauty, wildlife and cultural heritage of the park. I can't see that they do.
This is just checking what ecology enhancements are used, but I'm glad you said, Councillor Pett, that you're putting all of that previous to one side. It's not material for this planning application to consider that. Yeah, so I'm glad that you did say that. I just wanted to reinforce that. We're not looking at what has happened, hearsay, speculatively, different types of information that have come forward about that. We are looking at what's proposed, as we always do with planning applications. And secondly, you have to look at the proposal in a whole in terms of criteria G1, which is like a positive contribution. In principle, its positive contribution is it is enabling people to access the asset of the South Downs in its own right, so that people can experience the asset of the South Downs National Park. But that's why tourism is considered quite a positive thing to do. But you have to look at the proposal in its entirety, in terms of that and all the other criteria of the policies as a whole as well.
If I might come back briefly, I would accept that if I was not a member of the South Downs National Park Authority and acutely conscious of the fact that design and good design is at the heart of all the decision making of the South Downs National Park Planning Committee itself. I cannot accept that the design of this current proposal fits SD23G1.
Just to note, that is obviously a decision for yourself as councillor to consider. Does the design and the siting of it reconcile itself with the character of the countryside? So that's fine, which is in the policy, and you've seen the plans for the reuse of the facilities building and the proposed lodge. Okay.
Councillor Langford-Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Development is allowed under exceptional circumstances and it should enhance the conservation of the countryside. I fully appreciate that the purpose of the national park is to further tourism, etc. But I can't see what these holiday lodges offer over and above the facilities that the yurts already offer. They're already offering tourist accommodation in this location. So I'm struggling to make the differentiation between the offering that already exists, which actually facilitates more people than the lodges facilitate. So surely it would allow more people to enjoy the national park by retaining the yurts than by building a permanent structure in this location.
I think, Councillor, what we're looking at here is, why is the applicant applying for lodges vis-a-vis yurts? And that's ultimately within the gift of an applicant. They can apply for whatever they like in terms of a tourist use. If yurts don't meet the requirements for that particular applicant and their business need, so be it. If they come forward with lodges as being a more attractive offering, that's what you're being asked to consider. Not the purpose of why are the lodges not performing the need for this particular applicant, and we're now faced with a situation where the yurts could accommodate that need in any event. It's you're deciding what the applicant wishes to achieve and aspire to in relation to that tourist use, as it were. So we don't really question what it is and why we're faced with that particular application. That is what the applicant is applying for. You're asked to consider it in terms of the policy. I think also, Councillor Pett, you mentioned about moving away from Councillor Langford-Smith's comments about the purpose of was it SD23G1, positive contribute to natural beauty, wildlife and cultural heritage of the national park. Now, some of the provisions and the purpose of the natural park also go further than that, and it says of promoting opportunities for the understanding and enjoyment of the special qualities of those areas for the public. You're well aware of the Access to Countryside Act 1949, section 11(1)(a), and the two duties, as it were, of conserving and enhancing the natural beauty, wildlife and cultural heritage. But it goes on to say, and of promoting opportunities for the understanding and enjoyment of the special qualities of those areas. So could it not be also said that you have an application before you which also goes towards promoting opportunities for the understanding and enjoyment of the national park? Now, yes, planning policy has picked up the particular point. SD 23 G1 positively contribute to the natural beauty, wildlife and cultural heritage of the national park. But as my colleagues already said, by applying for lodges, you're opening up that possibility of positively contributing to the natural beauty. Why would you apply for redundant buildings not being used for the public to use for tourist purposes? You wouldn't make that application. So the point is, as the planning officer has already said, it meets this particular policy objective. It does positively contribute in that regards. But when we look at the other legal duties, you have to promote opportunities for the understanding and enjoyment of the special qualities of those areas as well.
If I may come back briefly on that, you'll also be well aware, Mr. Lucas, that under the Environment Act, the first purpose of the national park is to conserve, which takes greater weight than the second.
Yep.
And if there is any possible clash between the two,
you give more regard to the first one.
Weight is given to the first.
Exactly, and you've heard the response from my colleague that by enhancing positively and contributing to natural beauty, wildlife and cultural heritage, these particular lodges do enhance that ability, because why would you apply for redundant buildings for tourist users and not invite people to come to the park?
I don't think that's a judgment we can all make our own decision.
Right, okay. Thank you, Councillor Pez. I think you've made your point. Just a minute, please, Councillor Laming. Lisa, could I just ask about the landscape officer? I believe that the parish council pointed out that there was a knot missing, and that in fact the landscape officer does object to this because of the proximity of the Southern Lodge to the very important listed building collection at Manor Farm.
That was on the originally when it's coming. We went out on site with the landscape officer. We walked around, we looked at everything, and we had back and forth with the agent about moving the lodge one. So that was moved, and then there was all this further planting along there, some native plants.
So that's been addressed.
Yes, yeah.
Those concerns have been addressed. And my other question was, could you just talk for a moment about the cumulative development aspect of this? There is concern that the cumulative development of assorted holiday lodges, conversions, etc., means that it's overdevelopment in terms of tourist provision in this particular corner of the area of Twyford.
You mean in terms of people?
I mean, in
numbers of people,
numbers of accommodation.
So at maximum,
blocks.
this could there could be 5 yurts on there, and each yurt has
not just this site, but the neighbouring sites as well. That's the cumulative planning effect.
Yeah, I was going to say, well, each site's different, and it has to be taken on its own merits. The ones that Councillor Cork was talking about was across the road. So I think remember with a month or so I had a stable building, which was, and then the site next to it was dealt with by the South Downs National Park Authority in-house. So it was conversion of some stables to tourism, and then there was another application on the same site, but it was for eco-pods. Both were recommended for approval, and then the eco-pods was overturned, and that part of the site across the road is within the settlement gap and within the Twyford neighbourhood plan. I think they felt that the addition of the eco-pods was encroaching onto that settlement gap, further development. I mean, obviously this site is just outside of that settlement gap. I've got the plan there if you want to see it. And as I've said before, it is an existing site for tourism. So a capacity, there could be 5 yurts on there. So we have to treat it like that.
Right, thank you. Councillor Laming.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure whether I've missed this, but as these are permanent structures, we usually ask for level 5 on energy conservation. I can't see that in the papers. Maybe I've missed that. Are we doing that on this particular application?
Yes. Yes. Okay. Size is on it. Yeah, I think I'd have to double check on. No, there's a policy SD 48. Is that what you're talking about, isn't it? Pardon? Yeah, well, yeah, I think the same thing's SD 48. There's certain categories. I'd have to go back and double check that, and
yeah, because obviously with
depending on what happens, then you know, you can obviously delegate it to just double check. And
yeah, I'd like to see that included on the conditions if that's possible.
Yeah.
Yes, because there's no indication of solar panels or anything on these lodges.
Yeah, it's not a lot of residential. There is a category for non-residential. I think it's a certain size, so I'd have to double check. Off the top of my head, I think it is not required. But
yeah, can we put that in as a condition then, please?
It sounds to me that yeah, it's normally straightforward residential CUs without a restriction, certainly in Winchester, and as Lisa's clarified that we would expect certain code levels that wouldn't be relevant.
Non-residential
and non-residential needs a certain threshold of like square meterage normally to attract that level of let's say BREEAM assessment or something. So in this case we haven't done it, so we know that our assessment didn't need it, but we could. There's no harm in adding a condition to look at I suppose add-ons.
Yeah.
To deal with SD 48, for them to put a sort of strategy together of improvements in that respect.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, as adding into your planning balance when you're considering the merits of this application in the South Downs.
Good. Any more? Oh, Councillor Langford-Smith.
Sorry, Chair. Is it a planning consideration that the purpose of the national park is to promote tourism, and the fact that capacity for the number of people that could be accommodated on site is being reduced from 40 to 10? So it's actually reducing, or 12, sorry, from 40 to 12. So significantly fewer people could enjoy the benefits of the national park under this.
Since nobody seems to have used it before anyway.
The planning permissions that were, well, they're no longer they are extant, aren't they? It's partly been implemented, but it hasn't been implemented in its full extent. So it's hard to really put too much weight on that. But as I mentioned earlier, there is part of the policy requirements not to lose tourism sites, but it doesn't really talk about losing a maximum sort of intensity of that use necessarily. So I would say, yes, you can give it some weight, but I would recommend that you give that quite low weight, perhaps.
Councillor Pett, one more question.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I'm coming back on that particular point because in SD 23.2, development proposals that would result in the loss of visitor accommodation will not be permitted unless evidence is provided that the current use is financially unviable and a robust marketing campaign of 12 months has been carried out that clearly demonstrates there is no market demand for the existing use or equivalent tourism use. We've just been talking at length earlier that there is no such evidence that demonstrates that.
I think we were talking more about the not the loss, we were talking about the gain in terms of financial viability. And I think I only really have the advice that, yes, we're looking at losing tourism use. This is a tourist site that's not being lost. it never achieved 40 people on the site because it was never fully implemented. How much weight you want to give that, I think that's for members to determine. My recommendation is give it limited weight.
Okay, so if we're done with questions, we go to debate. I think I'll kick things off. We have before us a very difficult decision to make. This application, I would like to think that this is a fresh start for this site. It's a fresh application, perhaps under new management. And whilst we've heard lots of concerns, not least and most to be respected, from local residents who have concerns about the way that this has been dealt with up until now. However, we have our planning policies and very strong policies in favour of supporting tourism, both in the national park, in our own Winchester local plan, and indeed in the national planning policy framework. The tourism use for this particular site was established and agreed by the planning inspectorate themselves, so it wasn't something that we did before. And whether or not that application, that planning permission was fully built out and fully realised at the time, for all sorts of reasons which are immaterial to this application, is not something that we can take really into account. However, I think that we have drilled down into the application and the whys and wherefores and the history of it. And I think that our enforcement team and indeed neighbours in the parish will be looking on with huge interest to see that this is properly built out and properly maintained and managed as a holiday let site within the very strict conditions that we have put down both in the original report and indeed in the update, and strengthened in the update, I believe. And we will expect the up-to-date register of the names and dates and main home addresses of all the users of the accommodation, so that we can check that these conditions are being properly met. So with those things in mind, and having gone through all the concerns that I had and that have been raised, I believe successfully with the officer, thank you very much, Lisa, it's not been an easy one to do, I know, I am going to be supporting the officer's recommendation. Who else would like to contribute to debate? Councillor Langford-Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I'm still concerned about the loss of the capacity of 28 potential spaces for people to stay, but also the fact that the yurts can be taken down when they're not in use, so they're not a permanent structure. The conditions that we're asking for and the conditions that they have at the moment specify that the facility is only able to be used during certain months, so it's actually empty for half of the year, and therefore the yurts could be taken down and it can revert to countryside during that time. The lodges don't offer that opportunity, so I'm still undecided.
Councillor Laming.
Thank you, Chair. I think the officers had a very difficult job on this particular one. I find there's lots of small intricacies that add up to something quite tough for me. I think that I cannot support this application.
Would you like to give us your planning reason?
Yeah, I'll come back to SD 23 and 22 and CP2 and CP11 because they are the fundamentals, what's behind it. And I think that we need to actually see that there was justification of the business there in the first place. And I don't think that's been demonstrated. And it leads to other questions that if this business doesn't succeed, we have got no safeguards that this isn't going to be turned into permanent residence. And that's it. And if we do approve it, I think we should consider the amendments as I suggested earlier.
I think we'd already agreed that, Councillor Laming. Thank you on the solar panels and the, yeah. Okay, where are we? Councillor Clear?
Thank you, Chair. I agree with your opening words. A difficult decision, yes, I'm finding it very difficult. Obviously, the yurts did not take off, and so I can understand why you are now, they weren't viable, and I can understand that you are now going to consider having lodges, which you hope will help a great deal. I cannot see, and I'm sorry, but I've got to say it, I can see no demonstration of need in this, and I can see no evidence of need, and I'm trying to get my head round it. I hear about policies, but I, like Councillor Langford Smith, I'm kind of on the fence at the moment, and I'm so sorry to say that, but I can't say yay or nay, just it. I'm still thinking. I'm sorry.
Councillor Ashmore?
Thank you, Chair. Also, yeah, it's not an easy decision. I do know the area. It's a very quiet cul-de-sac. And to have increased traffic in this area and the noise that might happen from this new proposal, I am concerned for the residents that are there at the moment. So I too am on the fence.
I'll just say, what would the inspector think? Councillor Pett?
I would hope that any inspector would go along with the established intent of policy SD23 in the South Downs local plan. I go back to what I said earlier, that design is central to all the decision making on development proposals in the South Downs National Park. I see nothing in the design of this proposal that, as I said earlier, positively contributes to the natural beauty, wildlife and cultural heritage. I cannot accept that that line in the policy is focused on the activity that will ensue from this development. I firmly believe that that is talking about the development itself. It is quite possible to have tourism development in the park that, by good design, does positively contribute to the natural beauty of a location and conserves wildlife, cultural heritage, and so on and so forth. There is nothing that I've seen in this proposal that convinces me that the provisions of SD23 are being fulfilled in this case.
Anybody else? Okay, so we come to the decision. This application is recommended for approval. Can I see all those in favour of approval, please? Those against? 6. Right. We now have to agree our reasons, planning reasons for refusal. So if you'd like to, we've got some already. Lorna, do you have enough, or would you like us to?
There's debate to be had, isn't there? But just in listening to everybody, we've got 2 key areas, which is policy SD23, number 2, criterion A, which is looking at the evidence for the loss of the offering on site, the reduction in terms of having 30 units, which was never realised, but down to 12, so that couldn't be realised. So that's something that's come out quite through quite a bit of the debate there. And then secondly, as Councillor Pett was saying, the design we've put the plans back up on the screen to you might want to look at the yes, in terms of SD5 and whether the design is appropriate in the location, which is sort of consistent with previous appeal. And that was the second area. So if there's anything else further to come forward, if you want to debate those things more.
Any more contributions to reasons for refusal? Councillor Cunningham.
SD 25(2) talks about the importance of exceptional circumstances. To justify unsatisfied need and local community support, of which there is none.
So I can clarify, it's a general development strategy, so it wouldn't be specific to tourism itself, which is covered by the policy SD23 in itself. So I wouldn't say that was a particularly robust policy to refuse it on. It's quite high level general, which then includes pointing the direction of tourism in the right locations.
I'm afraid I'm going to stick with there is SD23 G1 as well.
I think it might also serve the committee if we read out the other one. So the policy SD23 2A, development proposals that would result in the loss of visitor accommodation, visitor attractions and recreation facilities will not be permitted unless evidence is provided that the current use is financially unviable and a robust marketing campaign of at least 12 months has been carried out that clearly demonstrates there is no market demand for the existing use. Now, I believe there's 5 yurts, maximum occupancy of 6 people, 30, therefore. 5, was it 5 or 6? 8 people in a yurt. 8 times 5 is 40 then. And you're going down to 12, I believe, has been carried out, and that clearly demonstrates there is no market demand for the existing use or an equivalent tourism use. So I think there's merit probably there, as well as the design points.
Which then would be captured by G little 1, which is the positive contribution to the natural beauty. And you did say quite clearly earlier about that you didn't believe that it made a positive contribution and responded to the natural heritage. So that would be part of the policy. So we're looking at SD 23 G little 1 and 2 little a in terms of the viability and the design in respect to the national park.
Right, so on the basis of those reasons for refusal, can I see all those in favour of refusing this application, please? That's all members, so that application falls. We'll now have a short break whilst we swap over our planning officers. Thank you. Out again, please. Right, we now turn to the next item on our agenda, item number 12, which is at land of Petersfield Road in Bramdean, and our presenting officer is Tanya Novacek. Hello, Tanya.
Thank you, Chair. Before I begin, I would just like to outline the amendments following the initial submission, where the height of the proposed unit had been reduced from 5.52 metres at the eaves and an overall height of 6.73 metres from the initial 8.9 metres following feedback and objections of the local parish. And in addition to this, the steel composite panelling has been altered to a natural finish timber vertical cladding to fall more in line with the South Downs National Park Design Guide. The application at land off Petersfield Road, also known as Lacey's Farm, proposes to demolish 4 of the existing light industrial units, measuring between 3 and 4 metres high, occupied by McGregor Structures Limited, into one single unit. The site is positioned within a small cluster of properties and farmland to the west of the small settlement of Brandine within the South Downs National Park. Access to the site is directly off Petersfield Road and services McGregor Structures, the applicant, and George Can Garden Machinery. The light industrial units within the site are positioned to the north at a distance of 58 metres from the highway. The site is not openly visible due to the existing positioning and the existing screening that's been established. And with regards to neighbouring properties, the existing distance will be retained as the proposed unit will be positioned within the existing site. If I turn to the slides, just so that doesn't get a bit overwhelming. So this is an aerial view of the site. Where's the marker? Oh, there you go. So the site is to the east of the area. So these buildings where the marker is showing. These are showing on our aerial view. It shows us 3 different buildings, but actually there's another one attached to the side, which is also referenced within the drawings. So this is an image of within the site of the existing units and looking towards the neighbouring garden machinery unit. So this is what they look like at the moment, and lots of hard landscaping providing ample parking. This is access towards Calamunda Farm within the site. This is the large parking area to the front of the site. This is towards Petersfield Road, the entrance. And this is an image from Petersfield Road heading east. And that's heading west. So this is the existing site plan. And again, referring to, you can see it in this drawing clearly, there's another one there, a smaller unit. And this is the proposed. So it's proposing to take away that 4th smaller unit towards the eastern boundary and incorporating the other 3 into one single unit. So predominantly it will be a production area with offices and low-level windows along the east and northern elevation with access doors and roller shutter openings, obviously, to accommodate the light industrial use. If I could just outline some of the measurements that we're looking at in relation to what is being replaced. The proposed single light industrial unit will measure approximately 662 square metres and will replace the existing 650 square metres. So there's a slight increase. And with regards to the height, as previously outlined, the existing, it's, obviously there's a series of buildings that measure between 3 and 4 metres in height, and this is proposing an overall height of 6.73 metres with an eaves height of 5 metres. However, again, it's on a similar footprint, and the use of the natural materials will make a further positive contribution to the overall character of that unit that's been established. Concerns have been raised with regards to increasing activity within the site. However, the environmental health officer is satisfied that the activity within the site will remain as existing. However, to secure this, measures have been placed within the conditions under conditions 9, 10, 11 and 12 in order to further protect the amenities of the occupiers of the nearby properties. Therefore, it is recommended for permission and it is considered to comply with the policies outlined within the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tanya. We now go to public speaking, and our one public speaker is Robert Collett. Good afternoon, Mr. Collett. And you have up to 3 minutes when you're ready. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair, members, thank you for allowing me to speak this afternoon. My name is Rob Collett from Luke and Beck. I'm speaking on behalf of the applicant, McGregor Structures. I would firstly like to thank you officers for their assistance during this application process in helping to shape the high quality proposal before you, and naturally I fully support their recommendation for approval. McGregor is a South Downs based family business that has operated from Lacey's farm for a long period of time, and many of its workers live locally. The existing building and site are now outdated and largely beyond their useful life, and they are seeking consent for a new purpose-built building to enable their continued operations and allow for improved efficiency, providing employees with working conditions consistent with modern standards. The proposals involve the demolition of existing buildings and their replacement with a single building in the same location and with a similar footprint, with the height of the building reduced during the application process in discussion with your officers. The building will be clad with timber materials to provide a natural appearance to blend into its surroundings, consistent with other similar buildings in the local area. The proposals also include a new drainage system, measures to protect the watercourse, and ecological enhancements to promote biodiversity. The building is set well back from the road, with intervening vegetation to be retained, reducing its visibility and ensuring that the character of the site and the natural beauty of the area is maintained, in accordance with the government's purposes for national parks. The proposals will also promote economic well-being by allowing the continued operation of this business from the site, in accordance with the national park duty. In conclusion, this is an existing site that is operated for light industrial purposes for a long period of time without any complaint. The proposals seek to replace the existing outdated buildings with a new building in a consistent location and a similar footprint as the existing buildings, and will be clad with natural materials to ensure it is appropriate in its surroundings. I would therefore ask you to endorse your officer's recommendation and approve this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, do we have any questions or clarification for the applicants? Councillor Langford-Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Can I ask, is it one business that's operating from the premises at the moment, or are they separate businesses operating in each of the buildings?
The 4 buildings to be replaced are all owned and occupied by McGregor Structures. As the officers has said, there is a neighbouring site in different ownership next door, but no, the 4 buildings are all operated by the same business.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Could I ask, is it the garden machinery business that's the neighbouring business?
Yes.
And that's the one on the left on this plan, and that will remain.
Yes, beyond the red line.
Yeah,
it's in separate ownership and separate operation.
That's And can I just ask about on the photographs? There's a sort of a curved structure right by the entrance. Is that part of your operation? Is that going?
At the moment, yeah. The one you can see on that photograph there, yes. McGregor Structures manufacture temporary style buildings, and that building that's in that photograph is a sort of a show example to customers of what they build, but it is proposed and to be removed as part of this application, and it isn't included on the layout plan.
No, I thought not. Brilliant. Okay, thank you. Any more questions, Councillor Pett?
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, just adding to what the Chair just asked you. Not just that one, but the other, because there are 2.
There are 2. Yeah, sorry, I should have said that.
Is that right to the Cold War
yeah.
aircraft shelters almost?
Yeah, so yeah, the one you can see beyond the cars in that photograph with the white back to the building, that is also proposed. It's not shown on the layout plan. It's proposed to be removed.
That's right. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you very
Thank
much
you.
indeed. Thank you. Tanya, did you want to add anything before we come to questions?
I don't think so, Chair.
Thank you.
Everything's okay.
So, members, questions on the report? Do we have any? No questions? I think the applicant answered all my questions. Yes. So we move to debate. Councillor Langford-Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I think the proposal is actually a very positive contribution to this site. It will tidy it up. At the moment, it's a bit of a mismatch of lots of different style of buildings. They're not in keeping with the location in terms of blending in with the surroundings. I think the wooden clad structure will tidy up the whole site and will actually disappear a bit more into the landscape. But Councillor Williams.
Yes, I'll keep my comments short. Very well designed proposals, and the only sort of concern I had was in regards to some of the lighting seen on the photographs, but that's sufficiently conditioned in 13 and 14, so I'll be supporting the application.
Very good. Councillor Pett.
Thank you, Chair. Similarly, I'm positive about this. It's a very much an improvement on what's there at the moment. I think the only local concerns that I've read in the comments were about the watercourse, which is well away from the area of the site that's going to be developed. And indeed, I walked along the footpath at the back, and the current buildings blend in pretty well, and the new building might blend in equally as well, if not more so.
Okay. So if there's no more debate, we go to the decision. So this application is recommended for approval. Can I see all those in favour of approval, please? That's good. So that application is approved. And we now turn to item number 13. We just need to change our planning officers, I believe. Right, item number 13 on our agendas is at 2 Abbots Ann Road, Winchester, and our officer presenting is Charlotte Smith. If you could just explain why this application has come to committee, please, Charlotte. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair. So, as you can see on page 256 of your agenda pack, this has been referred to Planning Committee as the proposal will directly affect the sidewall of 4 Abbots Ann Road, which is the property of a councillor. This application is for a garage conversion with new replacement roof and single-storey extension, replacement windows, and the erection of a canopy to the side of the dwelling. So this side shows the location plan. You can see Abbots Ann Road here and Priorsdean Road here. This slide demonstrates the aerial view with the property indicated by the yellow star here. Slide 5 shows, slide 4 shows the proposed block plan, which demonstrates the modest increase in footprint in red. This slide demonstrates the existing floor plans. This slide shows the proposed floor plans where you can see the new canopy here, as well as the extension on the front. Here you can see the existing elevations along the top and the proposed elevations along the bottom. You can clearly see the green-grey cladding proposed for the front extension, as well as the enlargement of this window at the front. This slide shows elevations that were previously approved at the Planning Committee in September 2024. You can see the small pitched roof that was originally proposed and the solar panels that have since been replaced or removed from the application, sorry. This shows the view of the site from Abbotsand Road. This is the view of the site from Priorsdean Road. And finally, this is the site from the rear, and the canopy is proposed in this section here. The application is recommended for permission. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. And we don't have any public speakers. Do we have any questions for our officer members? Do we have any debate? So this application is recommended for approval. Can I see all those in favour of approval, please?
Sure.
So that application is approved. And that's the end of today's planning committee. Thank you very much indeed.